up to this point, we have talked about creation, and we're going to review all the stuff with dragons and snakes and some fun stuff. Talked about Adam and Eve in the garden. Talked about Cain and Abel. Adam and Eve are exiled from the garden. Cain is exiled from God. And then, out of God's graciousness, Eve is gifted or given another son, Seth. And last week we talked about the line of Seth and how Cain was cursed by God but yet protected by God, because God wanted to protect Cain and put the mark of Cain on him so that if anyone killed him, does anyone remember what would happen? If anyone killed Cain, 7 times over would be the retribution. And then the line of Cain continued, and eventually it ends in Genesis at this guy named Lamech, 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 and he has 2 wives, and what is he doing? Do you remember? He's bragging about killing a young man, like Cain killed Abel, right? So it has gotten worse. So this is wickedness and evil, and that line ends right there. It doesn't completely end, but it ends right there in that story. Parallel lines, the brother Seth is the new hope. Kind of like Star Wars. Isn't there a Star Wars movie called New Hope, right? New Hope. And there is some theology in that movie, by the way. He's the new hope. And out of that new hope eventually comes Noah and righteousness. So these 2 things are playing off of each other to show us this is not the way of God. This is the way of God. And here is Noah. However, right before we get to Noah, the world's in a hot mess. Murder, lies, deceit, blame. We hear about this in these stories of the first family on earth. And we have to imagine that when God says, I see the wickedness across all of the earth, that it's not by that time just those 3 or 4 people, right? Because we've heard about Lamech. We've heard about Noah eventually, so there's other people along, but God sees this wickedness, and so when we get there, it's a hot mess. Sandwiched between that set of stories about the first family and the flood story is this really weird paragraph that talks about this creature, this godlike being, this fallen angel called the Nephilim. And in that paragraph, this is one of those, wait, that's in the Bible moments. The Nephilim are described as the sons of God, and they go and they procreate with the daughters of man. And then they make these great warrior people. Right after that paragraph, God says the wickedness is across all the earth. All the hearts of all the people are inclined to evil. And oh my goodness, if we let them become like us, like gods, does that sound familiar? The creation story? God says if we let the people become like us, right? So there's a flashback to the creation story right there before we get to the flood. So there's just some crazy, crazy stuff going on in the world. And God's like, okay, I need a reset. You ever needed a reset? Right? Oh, I got to start that over. That's why they make erasers. It's oftentimes why we do annual resolutions in January, right? I'm going to start this program over. I'm not eating any more chocolate cake on Sunday mornings. Or brownies. We got brownies. 2 plates of brownies downstairs. I'm not eating any more brownies on Sunday mornings for a whole 3 months. We need a reset. God needs a reset. And so we hear the story of Noah. God comes down, and I'm not going to go through the whole story of Noah. You know the story, the 2 by 2. God said, Noah. Right? Cosby, yes. Noah, what? Who's that? Right? He's got this whole thing about Noah. Bill Cosby. And Noah builds the ark, and they go on, and then they go off, and they go on, and they have life, right? And everyone else is gone. But Noah's family has found favor in God's sight and goes aboard the ark. However, if you read the story of the flood, you might be a little confused if you pay attention to the details. One place it says they went in a pair, male and female, 2 by 2. They went into the ark. In another sentence, it says God said, or they came, and 7 sets of animals, clean or unclean and 1 clean. I forget which ratio that is, but there was 7 sets plus 1. So now is there 8 sets of animals on the boat? One place it says that the rains came down for 40 days and 40 nights. I think I read that one. Another place it says the rain came down and the earth broke open. Right? We heard that. The earth broke open. Well, which is it? Did it rain or did everything just crack open? One place it says they stayed on the boat and it rained for 100 days they were on the boat, floating around, before it started to dry up. The other one said 150 days. Well, can we not get the story straight? It's like talking to your kids. Well, which one was it? Was it that or was it that, right? Make it up as you go along. There's a reason why there are 2 sets of facts in this story. There are 2 traditions that we follow, and we heard them in the creation story. Do you remember Genesis 1? Right? So Genesis 1 was, and then it was good. Genesis 2 was, there's God walking along in the garden with the people, right? Adam and Eve, talking to them. 2 separate stories. Neither one of them sounds 100% like the other. Matter of fact, those 2 stories are really different. In the Noah story, what we see is there are, so I said 2 traditions, right? So there's actually 5 of them, but we'll get to some of them later. 2 set of writers. We think that Moses sat down and wrote all of these, and there's some thought there. Maybe Noah did have a journal and wrote them down, right? And then the writers came up and sort of compiled them into a tradition that went down from person to person. But it had taken a long time with a stone tablet, though. Right? One are the Yahwists. They're called the J source. So for example, if I wrote something, it might be the MP source. I saw the car accident out on the square, and I could see it from here, and this is what I saw. And I have a filter that I do that through. Am I compassionate? Am I worried about the people? Do I write all about the feelings and all of that about, when the guy exploded and was mad and then the police officer came and do I write that way? Or do I write, as some of my friends might write, at 2:45 and 10 seconds, a car came speeding down at what I estimated to be 55 miles an hour. And before they got to the stop sign, they hit their brakes, but they were too late. They slid at the speed of light into the red car with the blue bumper, with the bobble on the antenna. All the details, right? The Yahwists are the storytellers. They told their story throughout the 5 books of the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, sort of in a story format. They're telling about our sins, our foibles, about life in general, about our relationship with God, and they make God out in human characteristics, like God was walking in the garden and talking, right? That's the Yahwists. They're storytellers. The P source are the priestly class. The priestly wisdom class are the ones that wrote Genesis 1. First day, it was good. Second day, it was good. Third day, it was good. Fourth day, it was good. They are the detail persons. They are the ones who like order. They are writing so that we see God as the ultimate divine authority, that we have structured, ordered worship. Think about all the rules there are once we get into the temple. To do it this way, have to do it that way, and it's 2 centimeters this way and 8 feet tall over here. They like order. So these 2 stories of the flood are the same in their theology or I would say their end result is humanity's wicked, God wipes the earth out, Noah comes off the boat, and they repopulate the earth. That's the flow. But if you read one story or the other story separate of each other, you would only get part of the details. You only get part of the story. You only get one viewpoint. And so, there's an R source called the redactors. They're the editors. They take these 2 sources and they do their best they can to sort of weave them together. Now there's a whole process as to how the people figured that out. One uses one word for God, one uses another word for God, one is ordered, one tells stories, right? So we don't need to get into that here. That's like a whole Bible study thing. But there's a thing called the redactors. So I write a story, Linda writes a story, and along comes Andy and goes, oh my gosh, these are great stories. There are 2 views of the same story. Well, I like that one for this reason, and I like that one for those reasons. What are we going to do? We can't throw them out. Well, maybe we can make it make sense if we sort of put them together. And so that is what academic thought, the theologians believe has happened throughout the first 5 books of the Bible. And it really becomes clear as we've now moved into the Noah story and the flood. So when you read through that story and you wonder why there's 2 pair or 1 pair and 7 pair, 100 days, 150 days, when there's these things that seem to contradict each other, people may bring up to you in your life. Well, why don't you believe that Bible? So they can't even get their story straight. Well, both viewpoints are important. And rather than throw one out or rewriting those stories, they put them together so that we would have a fuller view of what that was all about. It actually strengthens the story for us. Now, it's seamless in some ways, and then it's not seamless in some ways. But the end result is, like I said, Noah gets off the boat. Right? Okay, so Noah gets off the boat. He, his 3 sons, and the women who don't have names. All 4 of them. They don't have names. They're called, they're like, Cindy's mom. That's what they are, right? They're Noah's wife. They get off the boat. And this boat, so we see it as like this arky boat looking thing. And I've been to the Ark Experience if you have a chance to go. It's a big museum and there's a lot of people in there, but it's really cool to like stand on the outside, inside, see the size of this ark. They tried, it's in Kentucky, they tried to make it the same dimensions of a cubit, this plus 7 inches or something, how many cubits. And then the word for ark was interesting to me. It's tavah. In Hebrew, ancient Hebrew, tavah is the word that's used for ark. It's only used in 2 stories in the entire Bible. It's used in the Noah story for the flood, where the earth is destroyed, the people go into this tavah, they go into the water, the ruach, the wind. Spirit comes and blows all the water away, and the ark comes out on dry land. The second place that it's used is for Moses. And you might be thinking this parting of the waters, and that is not the story.
The ark.
It is the ark, but not of the covenant. The ark of the covenant is, I knew I was going to not remember this one. Aron Habrit. Habrit meaning covenant. Aron meaning box, chest, or coffin. The story is when Moses' mom puts him in a box and puts him on the river. Saving humanity, there's a tie between Moses and Noah. Some call Moses, and I think Paul does this, Moses is the new Noah later on. And I'm telling you all this because there are connections between the Old Testament, the New Testament. There are connections between one story in the Old Testament to another story in the Old Testament. And it's deliberately put there so that we can make those connections and go, aha! Habrit. Aron Habrit. Ark of the Covenant. The Ruach, which I mentioned, is the wind that God blew over the waters in the beginning of creation. When it says the Spirit of God, the wind of God, the air, the breath of God blew over the waters of the deep to create, Ruach is the same word used when the waters disappear from Noah. Ruach. The Ruach came across the land and blew the waters away, and then the ark rested on dry land. So lest we think the Bible is boring, there's some pretty good excitement in the Bible if we can take the time to connect those things. So the water goes away, and God calls Noah out of the boat. And Noah comes out, and the first thing Noah does anyone know what the first thing Noah does? I read it this morning. He built an altar. Yes. He built an altar and he sacrificed a thing on the altar that was pleasing to God. He was thankful for saving his family, for saving humanity, for bringing them to dry land. He built an altar and he did a sacrifice. Then God put the rainbow in the sky and made a covenant with God's people. These are the first actions out of the boat. And then everyone lived happily ever after, right? End of story. No, it is not the end of the story, right? Because very soon, we did not read this today, Noah goes out and he plants a vineyard. Plants a vineyard. He makes wine from the vineyard. Then he drinks the wine. He gets drunk. He falls asleep in his tent. That is not the sin. Wine is good. Jesus drinks wine at the wedding. He falls asleep in his tent. And he doesn't have any clothes on. And his son Ham comes in, and it says he sees his father's nakedness. Now there's some speculation as to what happened in that tent. Did he just see him? Was there something nefarious that went on? We don't know. But Ham goes out and he meets his two brothers, and his two brothers are like, oh my gosh, what did you do? So they take a cloth and they back up into the tent and they drop the blanket on their dad. The boat, the ark, the Tivah brought the family, brought those who were righteous. But guess what else the Tivah brought along? Brought the human heart. It brought the sinful nature. It brought the wicked inclination. The boat brought the righteous people, and it brought the good along with the not so good, the good with the bad, the right with the wrong. We have God as our Tivah. God moves us through the waters, moves us through the chaos of this earth, moves us through the problems. We can hang on to God. We can go for the ride. And we know that at the end, God has us. And yet, then when we step off the boat, all is not 100% right. Things are going to happen. We carry that wickedness or that sin or that non-righteousness with us. We need more than a reset. No one needed more than a reset. Thankfully, God doesn't let us go. Thankfully, our Tavah, our box, our ark, God is with us all the time. Under us, behind us, before us, on either side of us, above us, inside of us. No matter where we go, no matter what chaos we float through, no matter what's at the end of that, God is there for us and with us always. And that is the hope that we hold on to through this story. So when you look at a rainbow or a rainbow of colors next time, remember that God is your hope today. It's not just some Bible story for our 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds. Remember to grab onto that hope. Grab onto the ark. Grab onto the rainbow. Amen.